Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Brand Bosses podcast. I am so excited for this episode today. We are diving deep into health and wellness, specifically women's health and wellness. So any of our ladies out there are going to want to listen into this. So we have Andrea on the podcast. So Andrea experienced a high-risk twin pregnancy in 2014, sparking her journey towards safer living. As she searched into the world of personal care ingredients, she was alarmed to find and discover the lack of regulation in the industry. This led her to educate herself on potentially harmful ingredients and their associated health risks, igniting a passion for sharing her knowledge with others. In 2019, she launched the Switch Natural blog to document her findings and empower others to make informed choices. Alongside the blog, she cultivates a strong and engaged Instagram community. Recognizing the need for a more accessible solution, she took her mission to the next level in 2022 by launching the Switch Natural mobile app. This app allows users to scan products, providing detailed ingredient descriptions, toxicity research, and unbiased recommendations. Andrea is passionate about helping others navigate their non-toxic lifestyle journey through her nearly 40,000 followers on Instagram. Through her app, she continues to serve customers with the mission of making safer product choices easier and more accessible for families everywhere. Welcome to the show, Andrea. Thanks for being here.
What an introduction. Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
Yes, we are so excited to have you. And, health and wellness, all of this kind of clean living is a passion of mine. So I'm definitely excited to dive in here. And so let's just start from the beginning. So take me back to 2014 and maybe just describe kind of what sparked this journey a little bit more.
So in 2014, I found out I was pregnant with twins. Huge surprise. And early on, I knew it was going to be a high-risk pregnancy because the babies were so close together that I was told, there's just a lot of risks with this type of pregnancy. And I immediately started thinking, I've got to get everything in my environment, all my ducks in a row. I don't want to add any additional risk because I've already got this high risk pregnancy. And I think any expecting parents have all of these thoughts. What do we need to do to prepare for the baby and not introduce anything that could be harmful to them? And I've always loved products. So that's something that I thought about. I initially thought about food. My maternal fetal specialist really emphasized nutrition. And I was focused on food, and very quickly I got focused on products. And I think what started it was this conversation I had with my husband. I was just thinking, what should we paint the baby's room? And he was full stop, no, we're definitely not doing any painting, any construction in our home because there's a lot of toxic fumes. Mm-hmm. And it really got me thinking about everything around me. And I just went straight to products. And I started looking at my products thinking, are these safe? And when I looked at the ingredients inside, I was finding some inconsistencies. I was seeing ingredients in products that were supposedly safe for pregnant women and to be around children. But then I would find an article that said, well, you're not supposed to use this ingredient. So I was like, what is going on? And then I started learning that there's really not a lot of regulation on our everyday products. So I wanted to know exactly what was in my products. And I did this very methodically. Once I knew this, I was on a mission and I wanted to learn what all of these ingredients meant. And I kept track of my research because if you flip a product over, it's not like a food product. You don't know what any of the words mean, even if they're safe. It's like reading another language. So it was really starting from scratch. I kept track of all of my research and I knew that I wanted to share this because other people certainly were going to have the same questions that I was having. And there wasn't a centralized, trusted source that I could rely on for this information. It was me just going after the peer-reviewed studies and digging behind the articles to the actual research, figuring this puzzle out really. And I haven't looked back.
Wow. What a journey. And what I love about this too is you really took matters into your own hands for the health and safety of obviously your family. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, especially in just today's, health industry. And so were you interested in kind of health and wellness before this journey? What was kind of your career path, I guess, prior to diving into all this?
Yeah, sure. I was always interested. I always had a curiosity for health and and wellness. It's not, so going back to 2014, it's not trendy like it is today, I guess. But my previous career was totally different. So I had a finance degree and I was working in business valuations. And that kind of came to a full stop once my kids were born. I didn't know if I was going to be able to continue that, but being in a client service business, you had to be available all the time and taking care of twins. It was difficult to do both. And so I sort of took a risk and pivoted because this was such a passion of mine. And I have to give credit to my husband too, who really saw that in me and kind of motivated me and gave me the confidence to go for it. It's not something I ever would have considered as my job. It was something that I was doing because it was a burning desire and passion, and I was so driven to figure this out. But in terms of sharing it, he's really the one who was like, you need to share this. Like, you actually are figuring stuff out, and it could help a lot of people. So
yeah. And I think that's awesome that it kind of started as this passion that you just continued to follow and just learn more about. I think with health and wellness, it can kind of be a rabbit hole. Like it can be just a lot, right, to go down. And sometimes, things are good. Sometimes they turn out to be bad. And it just can be honestly a frustrating journey, kind of being in this sphere. And so I'm curious, how have you kind of built your foundation as you've built your brand, and kind of how have you navigated, say, health or health and wellness, maybe I'll say, becoming more and more trendy when it comes to influencers and just an online presence?
I guess, let me think. So the question is, how do I sort of make sense of health and wellness in the current environment?
Yes. Yep.
It's a great question because it has changed so much since I started. So I can only think of a handful of people who were blogging about this or posting on Instagram when I started. And clean really wasn't a household understood term, and wellness. So you really had to go digging for this. And now it's sort of everywhere. So I went from having no information to really the opposite problem is now we're in a climate where everything is claiming to be clean because brands and know that that's what consumers are looking for and are expecting. And the problem is there's no legal definitions for these terms. So especially with products, clean, natural, non-toxic doesn't mean anything. And it strictly is a marketing term. So companies are using it far too much. So there'll be a product that has toxic ingredients, but it just has a clean label on it and consumers don't know the difference. And so they're buying it. So we have this issue of what I call clean washing going on. And we really have to sort through that. And that's where I really want to be a resource for people, is to cut through all of that noise, encourage people not to be blindsided by the marketing or be fooled, and to really understand what's in their products, which takes a lot of time and effort, and people don't have the time to research all of this stuff. And so since I've already done it, I want to be a resource for others in that way and make it easy, because it really is something that's easy to do if you have the right tools. It can be either really overwhelming or really easy. So I'm hoping to bridge that gap for people.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. And I have the perfect example of this. My sister is expecting her fourth, and she is obviously a busy mom. She's working full time. She has 3 little ones. She's pregnant, right? Just a lot going on. And so I love listening to health and wellness podcasts. So I'll send her one, but they're like an hour or two, and she'll write me back something of the nature. Can you give me the spark notes of this? I don't have time to listen. And so what I really appreciate kind of your stance and kind of what you're doing is you're really distributing content that is bite size. It's to the point. You're using imagery. You're showing the different ingredients, the different products that folks should maybe reconsider. And you're just kind of painting this picture that I think is really digestible for the average person.
Amazing. I relate to your sister so much.
Yeah.
I say this all the time. I don't have patience for podcasts. I don't have patience. And this has sort of been a recent, I've always felt this way, but it's sort of a recent realization that people just need to get to the bottom of the information. They need it quick, especially for something like this. It's just, we don't have a lot of time, and we're flooded with content. I mean, we are bombarded. You open your phone and it's almost like an invasion of your time, and you can get sucked in. And so I really try to be respectful of people's time. And if someone's following me, I don't want to burden them with unnecessary information.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a lot of people do feel overwhelmed because there's a lot of noise. And so I aim to be concise and brief, especially on something like Instagram, where people just need the important information.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm sure that you expand on a lot of these different topics using your blog. Is that kind of how you navigate that?
Absolutely. And I actually started the blog first thinking that's where people would get the information, but I realized like the back and forth that I was having on Instagram was where it was at. I mean, people were messaging me directly all day, every day, and that communication was amazing. But if you do want a deep dive, I have the information there. And then I also have ingredient information on my app, of course, so you can look into the toxic ingredients so that you kind of have both options. And then I've been exploring, things like this podcast. Sometimes, and some people need to hear the full story and to be able to process it, and then they're more likely to take action. I think that we're all kind of different in that way too. Some people enjoy longer form or
Yeah.
more motivated by that or inspired by that too.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. And I like what you said kind of earlier, which you said something of the nature, non-toxic, all these different labels. They're simply just labels. And that doesn't mean that they're, products or ingredients that we should be putting on our bodies and using. And so I kind of want to dive into that. Do you remember kind of when you first came to this consensus where you're just noticing, okay, some of these products are saying clean, they're saying organic, they're saying all these things, yet for some reason their ingredients are just filled with toxins. When did you first kind of see this trend or kind of have this realization? Do you remember?
It happened pretty early on.
Yeah.
I can remember it was probably a few years in, because when I very first started, I remember there was things that were labeled green.
Okay.
And then at some point, and those are hard to find. Those were not in places like Sephora or Target. I would say that's more within the last 5 years. It's kind of gone off the rails with everything being claimed as clean. If you look at, I think, the clean beauty industry the growth that's projected is astronomical. And the growth that's happened in the last 5 years has been huge. And I think that you've also seen these bigger brands start to buy up brands that were once clean or invest in these smaller brands that are doing well, and they're just trying to capitalize on that trend. Clorox bought Burt's Bees. That was a big one. So I really would say the last 5 years has been pretty intense, and I expect it to keep going. There was a lawsuit against Sephora because consumers were saying that what Sephora is calling clean didn't line up with their expectations. That one was settled. There's a similar lawsuit with Target Clean. That one's still going on. So consumers are catching on to it, I think, now, and I don't know how it's going to all play out, although there has been a piece of legislation that passed on cosmetics regulations. So the last one was in the 1930s, and then there's only been one since then, and that was the MOCRA legislation just a few years ago, and it was really only incremental changes. So I guess all that to say, it's slow progress, but the regulations are never, I don't think, will ever really protect us. It's going to have to shift to us as consumers. And I think consumers as a whole are what's going to move the needle. If we stop buying products with certain ingredients that we don't want in our products, then they're going to stop making them. But until then, the regulations aren't stopping them.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great overview of that. And so I want to speak to the person who maybe is looking at clean beauty or looking to kind of switch it up and go a more, let's say, natural or healthier route. Where would you tell them to start when it comes to clean beauty? Maybe we'll just start there. How would you kind of advise them as they begin their journey, kind of looking to make some healthier switches?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love this question. And I think that it can vary from person to person. But the thing that works the best for most people, in my experience, is to start to replace products as you're running out of them. So the best product to switch is the one that you're running low on, because you can start looking for an alternative option. You're more likely to buy one that suits your needs because you're starting to look, and then you don't have this feeling of I'm wasting everything. A lot of people feel like if I just throw out my makeup bag, like that's a lot of money, it's a lot of waste. And then you might not like everything that you bought at once. So I think if you can be more intentional with your future purchases, I call this switch out as you run out. I think it's the most enjoyable way to do it, the least overwhelming, and you're more likely to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And obviously, you have developed a resource for people, right, to scan different products and kind of see, where are we at with, is this something maybe I should purchase or maybe hold off on? So talk to me a little bit about the mindset in developing this app.
Yeah, so I love that you pointed out that way you can start scanning things before you buy. That's the way I love to do it. So
Yeah.
I do a lot of shopping online, so I built the app specifically. So if you're shopping online, you just want to find the ingredient list, take a screenshot of it, or if you're looking at your computer, take a photo of it and run it through the app to find out if there's any toxins before you go to buy it. And you get surprised, products that you think are clean might have toxins. Products that maybe aren't even advertising that they're super clean end up being clean, but it's a good way to sort through it all, especially if you're going, like I once shared this piece of content. Before you take your daughter to Sephora, a lot of girls really want to go to Sephora. Don't just go there and start picking up all the products. Like, do some homework in advance, scan a bunch of products and find out which ones are clean, and then go directly to those and then maybe try them and pick the ones that you want based on that list of clean products. The idea from the app was really an extension of my community. Got to the point where I had so many questions in my DMs. People want to know, is it clean? If it's not clean, why? And what should I buy instead? And by time I would respond, they would have already bought the product. They were waiting in line at the store. So I wanted a tool that could get the information that I had to them instantaneously and at all times. And really, that's what the app does. It's like having all the research in your pocket. So it's worked out really well in that way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Having all the research in your pocket. And so then, you're basically kind of cutting the route for people, because going back to where you started, right? You're the one that's doing all the research. You're looking for all the different articles, like, is this something I should purchase or not? And you're kind of providing, say, an easier route for folks, which I think is a great opportunity.
Thank you. Yes. And what's super cool about it too is I'm constantly still researching. Like, that part of me hasn't stopped, and new information comes out all the time, but I built the app so that it can be updated in real time. So if when we end this podcast, I come across another ingredient that needs to be added, I'll add it. And then the next product that anyone goes to scan, it'll pop up. So
yeah, that's so awesome. So it kind of continues with, I guess, the development of research and the articles that come out, which is really, really awesome. And, I downloaded some sort of app, I don't remember the name of it, that I think was kind of a similar concept. And what I found really surprising was, like, take it deodorants, for example, like, I don't know, like a natural brand, you scan one flavor per se and it's supposedly clean. And then you scan another and it's just like the worst thing you could buy, or it's like, level 10 on the scale. And that was just really surprising to me, and how, like, deceptive that is for the average consumer, right? Like, you see this brand, it's a freaking, $10 deodorant, right? And yet you buy the wrong flavor and suddenly it's the same as buying a $3 deodorant, right? And
right.
So how, like I'm kind of expressing, there can probably be some frustration around navigating all of this. And so I'm curious, how have you kind of built your household and helped your family really implement some of this, some of these clean, I guess, ingredients and products? How have you kind of done that personally?
It's a really good point that you make. I always tell people to not rely on brands as a whole. It's very rare that an entire brand is clean. And like your example is an extreme one, even within different scents or flavors or fragrances. So, and I want to point this one out. There's one, I don't know if this is the one that you're talking about, but Tom's deodorant has an aluminum free and then one with aluminum. You don't want deodorant with aluminum because aluminum is a neurotoxicity, associated with neurotoxicity, but the packaging is almost identical.
Interesting.
And so one of them's aluminum free and one of them's not. If you had them side by side, you'd have to look really closely to see the difference. So you really want to be scanning the ingredient list on every single product and not just saying, okay, I'm going to keep buying from this one brand. And also every time you repurchase it, you want to scan it. because brands do change ingredients from time to time, even without changing the
That's a good
packaging,
point.
and you wouldn't have any way to know. So sometimes I get asked, why can't we save scans on the app? And that's the reason I want to encourage people to keep scanning every time they buy. And
Mm-hmm.
as far as how I've done it in my home, my kids are 10 now. My husband, I feel like it's part of our lifestyle. We look at labels before we buy things. My kids do it, I do it, and it's sort of fun and it sparks curiosity. And it's been really neat to see my kids learn and ask questions, and they recognize ingredients now, and it's not really burdensome. It's a really small lifestyle change, which is looking at the ingredients. And if you can just get in the habit of doing that, I think you'll be a lot more thoughtful with your purchases. You just a little bit more intentional in your life in general. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's good for everybody to be that way. We can't just mindlessly consume.
Yeah. I think you said that really well too. And like the intentionality, right? It doesn't have to be a burden to take another, couple of seconds at whatever grocery store, whatever Target that you're at to look at the ingredients. And so let's direct people a little bit. What are some just, I guess, common ingredients or things typically found in personal care products that you typically tell people, stay away from these?
Yeah, so definitely aluminum and deodorant.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other really big one is fragrance. There's a problem with fragrance. I'm sure you know this, that
Mm-hmm.
fragrance is a blanket term for many, many ingredients. And the FDA says that companies don't have to put on the label what the ingredients are that make up that fragrance. And what studies have found is there are harmful ingredients in the fragrance. So if a product has the word fragrance on the back, know that you don't have all the information. So if you really want to buy, you either need to ask the brand if they'll disclose all of the ingredients. Their answer will tell you everything you need to know. A lot of times they won't. If they will, then you can run that list through the app to see if there's any toxins there. But generally speaking, if you are at the store and you've got a fragrance free and a fragranced, you're gonna do better buying the one without the fragrance. So that's an easy shortcut. Another ingredient that I still see frequently, which blows my mind because there's been so much controversy with it, is talc. Talc has been found to be contaminated with asbestos. It's the way that it's mined in the earth. Asbestos is really close, and so it's really difficult to get talc that doesn't have asbestos in it. They found it in Claire's makeup. They found it in Johnson & Johnson's baby powder, which has led to one of the biggest lawsuits ever that's still pending. It's like up to $9 billion. But it's still in Charlotte Tilbury makeup. It's still in supplements, which that's a whole other issue. It's still in food, but it's in a lot of everyday products, a lot of powders, loose powders. You don't want to inhale it because it can lead to mesothelioma. So I like to give that one because I think it's important and it's easy to spot. It's usually the first ingredient. It's 4 letters, talc. If it has talc, you don't want it. So it's a fragrance, talc, aluminum into your deodorant. And then another big one is chemical sunscreen. So we found out that chemical sunscreens are absorbed into our bodies and they can impact our hormones. So we really want to stay away from those.
Yeah, I think those are great. And so talc, is that TALK?
TALC
TALC. Okay, got it.
or talcum powder, but it's usually listed as talc.
Okay, perfect. What about, I'm just curious, like perfume? I see that on, all kinds of different products. Is that kind of just as toxic as fragrance? Do they mean the same thing?
Yes, that's a great point. So fragrance, it might be listed. It's often listed as either fragrance, perfume, parfum, PARFUM, or aroma. That's all the same thing. It's very similar to flavors that are added to food. These flavors are like chemically engineered to make them addicting. It's kind of the same way with fragrance, and the fragrance chemicals are added to the product to make it last a long time too. It's why if you use a fragrance laundry detergent, the clothes smell for days. It's like you can't even get the smell out. It's so strong. There's something called phthalates in there, and those are harmful chemicals that we definitely don't want to be using.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of went through a moment, I'd say a month or two ago, my team would laugh at me because I always tell them when I kind of go through these purges where I'll be like on Instagram and I'll see something like some sort of product that I'm using and suddenly, it's just super bad for you or, it's going to be an endocrine disruptor and I completely just, I purge it and I just look for everything else that I just need to get rid of. So I like your point about like, use what you have and then buy new. I think that's a great point. So let's talk a little bit about, endocrine disruptors, because I saw a video on your profile a little bit where you talked a little bit about that and some of the ingredients that lead to this disruption. So maybe could you just dive into this a little bit? Could you just expand on this and kind of your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So endocrine disruptors are sneaky because I think that when people are trying to avoid toxins, they think it's going to have an immediate reaction. Their body's going to somehow know, but it's this low dose exposure over a long period of time that's really messing with our bodies. And, the places where these are found are, I mentioned chemicals, sunscreens, different types of preservatives are often endocrine disruptors, like parabens. And then the phthalates that are in the fragrances are endocrine disruptors, and they can mimic our hormones. They can mess with the hormone receptor sites, and our hormones control all of our bodily processes. They can even, so for instance, there's certain endocrine disruptors that can mess with your metabolism. They're called obesogens. So technically your products could be contributing to weight problems. So it really runs the gamut. It can affect your reproduction, the development of a fetus. So phthalate exposure in a specific month during pregnancy has been correlated to developmental problems. So it really runs the gamut of all of your bodily processes, which can then lead to cancer. So endocrine disruptors are really something we need to avoid in our products if we can. And I guess taking a step back, I want to point out that the goal of this isn't to be perfect. So I say switch out at a time because it's doable. There's a lot we can't control in our environment, but products to me are the ones that we can control, especially when there's an equal alternative without it. So I'll give the example. You can easily find makeup that works just as good as the makeup with the toxins in it. So why not switch? It's a side-by-side switch. There's a few things that you can't find a switch for. One is nail polish. There's not a totally clean nail polish. So maybe what you do is you use it less. Like for me, in the wintertime, I don't paint my toenails because I'm never wearing open toe shoes. So I just reduce my exposure. And to not get so stressed that you have toxins around you, but just to kind of chip away at it, because any switch that you make, it really does add up over time. 10 years into this and almost everything I've switched out, but it's been a slow process. And you don't want to get stressed about it because stress is just as bad, or if not worse, than the toxins in our products.
I think you make a great point. And I like how you mentioned earlier too, your goal is simply to cut through the noise. I think that's a great way to kind of look at it. We don't have to be necessarily perfect with everything we put on our body, but I think it's about trying and recognizing that you are worth it. And I think there's a lot of self-love that kind of goes into it as well. And so I'm curious kind of what you think about a certain skincare product that I've seen in the news a little bit lately. And I've talked about this a lot with some of my friends. There was some sort of study, you're going to know way better than I do, recently about tampons and some like metals or just some, toxic, I guess, ingredients within tampons. And I'm curious, your thoughts and kind of maybe how you've navigated this, how you provide an alternative for these.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I also, I'll definitely want to touch on the tampons before. I think you said something about, it's different. I want to point out that it's different from person to person. So the things that I choose to switch out might not be the same things that you choose to switch out. And I don't want to tell anyone to part with their absolute favorite lipstick that they love. I don't think that's the thing that you start with. I think you start with the things that you don't mind, that you don't like have to have.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just a tip I wanted to throw out there. And to not compare yourself. There is a lot of noise. If such and such, so this person switched this product doesn't mean that you have to switch that product. You switch something that you feel comfortable switching. But for the tampons, this is a great one because it's just wild to me what they're putting in tampons. So if you think about it, just the basic of it is the cotton. So I tell people to look for organic cotton because cotton it's farmed and there's pesticides that are used to make the cotton that goes into the tampon. So if you get organic, you're going to have less of the pesticides. But then on top of that, they're adding ingredients like paraffin to put wax on the string. And that's a petroleum derived ingredient that can have harmful byproducts on it. So there's no reason why we should put paraffin on a tampon. There's no reason why they should be bleaching it to make it white. We don't need our tampons to look white. They're adding titanium dioxide in the tampons to make them look whiter. What else do I see? So I go for organic cotton. If you can, you want, I think some of them even have fragrance. I don't know if that's still as common.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want you don't need them to be fragrance. We don't need wax. We don't need you want 100% cotton tampon with nothing else in there. And this also gets tricky because it's one of those categories where they're not required to list all the ingredients. So you really want to seek out a brand that is proactively telling you everything that's in the tampon. A brand that I like to recommend because all it is organic cotton is called Nature Care. I've seen those in the store and I've seen them on Amazon. So
That's a great tip. And I think you brought up a good point too, which is, they don't always have to tell all the ingredients. Would you say that's pretty like streamlined across personal care products? No.
not at all. No, though there's just a few exceptions. Cleaning products are not required to list all the products. If you look at just some of the popular cleaning products, like I think maybe Lysol or 409 is this way. If you look at the bottle on the front, it'll say 1% active, and then it'll list an active ingredient, and then it'll say 99% other ingredients. And nowhere on the packaging does it say what the other 99% of the ingredients are. That's just an example. So cleaning products, they don't have to list it, and then menstrual care products, they don't. But for cosmetics, they're supposed to list everything. Skincare, they're supposed to list everything. And then sunscreens are even a little bit different because sunscreens are considered a drug and a cosmetic, and drugs have another level of scrutiny. So if you look at the back of if you look at the ingredients in sunscreen, they're going to be broken out in two sections: active ingredients and inactive. So active is what's getting that extra regulation. They want to make sure that it's actually protecting you from the sun. And then other ingredients inactive is everything else. So when you're assessing a sunscreen, you do want to look at both sections. And the active is where you're going to see those chemical sunscreens that you want to avoid. Look for ones that only say zinc oxide. That's the safest UV filter, and it's not a chemical sunscreen. And then also in the other ingredients, they're going to have preservatives. They might have fragrance and other things that you want to avoid.
That's so interesting. So I guess my follow-up question is like, why is there kind of this lack of regulation per se on like menstrual and cleaning products? Like how did this come to be?
That's a really good question. I think I've read that with the menstrual products, it's just, I don't know. It's like a loophole. It's a really good question and one that I don't have a great answer for, but I wish it were different.
Yeah, well, I think you described it well. Like it is a loophole, and not all of us. I don't expect you necessarily to have all the answers, but I think as a consumer, as a female consumer, it is very frustrating that something like menstrual products, something that, not to be graphic, but is close to a female's reproductive, systems and things like that, doesn't have a lot of regulation. Like to me, that's something that should be definitely changed. And I'm curious your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I definitely think it should be changed. I think that anything that we can do on our end to kind of nudge the industry in that direction, like collectively, I think the more people that are seeking out the better options, I think that that's just the bottom line. I think the regulations happen far too slow. Like I was mentioning talc. So a lot of people for many years, it's not just put on in babies' diapers, but adults put this on their body and in their underwear, and it's been associated with ovarian cancer. We've known this for I think since, we've known that talc has been problematic since I think the 1950s. I think the association with ovarian cancer was not long after, but we're just now, Johnson & Johnson, who has made most of this baby powder with talc, just within the last year has stopped putting talc in baby powder worldwide. It was phased out in the US 2 years ago, but now it's not. They're finally phasing it out completely. So I just want to empower people to make the decisions on their own. And there are so many good brands now that are doing the right thing, that are trying to make products with the best ingredients available, avoiding the things that we know are harmful, which is, I wish the big brands were doing it too, but a lot of times it's these smaller, really purpose-driven brands that are leading the charge. And I want to do my best to support them and spotlight them. And then more of it'll be available for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And I think ultimately it's a marathon, it's not a sprint,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. And so I love that you say, support these maybe smaller businesses that are trying to provide a clean option. Is there anything else you would recommend, like the consumer can do? Any other advocacy, anything else that you recommend, like we can do to help maybe move things forward a little bit more?
Think would be really great is just to encourage people to have the conversation more with friends and family. It's something that can be awkward. And I personally am so shy and have felt on an island being so obsessed with this topic. But the more that I can share nuggets of information to people, it sort of plants a seed. And then, maybe someone will come back to me 6 months later and say, I remember you said XYZ and I saw it on the news, which is great. Some of this stuff makes the mainstream news and they start piecing it together. But just to kind of plant those seeds and really start sharing the information can be super impactful. And like we've seen with social media, I mean, information can spread like wildfire if people want it to.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm curious how you would advise someone to maybe approach a family member gently and respectfully, or maybe share some of this knowledge. Like, how have you gone about, maybe with your immediate circle, suggesting maybe an alternative or choosing a healthier option? What has that looked like for you?
Yeah. So the best way is when I find a product that I absolutely love and I like recommending things. It's fun to me. So if I find a product that I love, and of course it's going to be clean if I recently purchased it and discovered it. So I share with people the benefits of that product aside from being clean. And then I mention as a side note, and by the way, it doesn't have this thing that's going to mess with your hormones.
Yeah.
For friends that works really good. And then some people really need to know the why. And that's why I include all the research and links to research. Anytime I share information about ingredients, they want to know, they want to dig, and they need to see the proof. And for someone like that, just sharing the research can be really impactful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think people too, like one thing that I do with friends and family is I simply send them things I see on Instagram and, folks like you who are coming out with these videos, kind of disclosing some information on some of our everyday products. I think that's even a gentle way some people can kind of send a
Yeah.
recommendation.
Absolutely. It's sort of a hands-off way and like they can
Yeah,
read it or take it or leave it. It
right.
doesn't have to get into this like debate, but here's what I'm finding, here's what I'm seeing, what do you think? Just to get the
Yeah.
conversation started, for
Yeah,
sure.
I love that. And I think you're also kind of bringing up a good point, which is like when you have energy or passion for something, like people can feel that and they want that, right? So if you find
Yeah.
a product that you're just in love with and you kind of just share that energy that you're feeling, I think that is really, it's approachable for someone. And also they can see that you're just doing it. You're doing it from a good place and from a good intention, and I think that's truly like what matters most.
Absolutely. Yeah, you would never want it to be like a problem between you and someone. You're just trying to help. So I would
Right.
definitely, not try to be too forceful or to assume that anyone is going to take on your opinion, but just to share yours in a
Yeah, no,
non-judgmental way.
for sure. And I think that's a great point and something that I even need to implement because sometimes I get a little too passionate and I'll see something on Instagram that's just deemed, not good anymore, whatever it is, and or in the news or whatever it is, and I just get very I get passionate and like I said, I purge it out of my house first and then I go to my family and I'm like, get rid of it. Like it's gone, right? But I
Yeah.
think, having a more gentle approach is definitely going to be more approachable to the average person. And ultimately, like I think both of us are saying, like it's out of the benefit of our own good and of the good of society. And I think that's just such an important point.
Yeah, I can relate. I do have to rein it in sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just like the gentle encouragement, it goes a long way. And I really try hard not to fearmonger. It's a thin line because I want to share the information it just is what it is without attaching unnecessary fear. And like I said, without being intrusive to people's
Yeah.
lives. And so that's why I try to do it just in piecemeal and just, yeah, and get excited about the products that do work. Like, don't even think about how bad the other option is. Just get excited about this other option that you can
Yeah.
buy.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're a
Yeah.
lot better. actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I think keeping it positive is kind of what you're saying, and I love that
Yeah.
point too. Yeah, okay. Well, I kind of want to move on to more specific products that you love, that you live by in your household. I would love to hear a few that just maybe come to mind, sunscreens, cleaning products, whatever it may be, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. So for cleaning products, I think a really easy way to start is with a brand called Branch Basics because they make one concentrate and it makes a bunch of different products and you can try them all out. And it's actually one of the products that I've used the most in my home is their all purpose because I can use it to spray stains on my clothes. I use it to clean my countertops. It's just it kind of I can use it for everything and I like that it has almost no smell. It's just has very easily seamlessly come into our lives and taken the place of all the cleaning products, and they're refillable, which is nice too. For sunscreen, there's a brand called Badger that I like. They came out with a newer version last summer that I feel like rubs in pretty well. It's not super greasy or super chalky. Like my kids don't mind it. It's kind of finding that balance is tough when you're looking for a clean sunscreen. The ingredients are super simple. There's not a whole lot there. So that's one that I recommend for sunscreen. And what else do I love? There's so many. I think that I have sort of cherry picked
Yeah.
products in each category. And I do share those in my app and on my website too. If you ever
Yeah.
just pop in whatever category you want. But yeah, I'm happy
Yeah.
to share more. Ask away.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great start. And I appreciate you just giving a few because we don't want to overwhelm folks either. But I think these are great starting points for sure. And I'm also curious, you're clearly a parent, right? You're running this business. How have you kind of shared some of these values with your children? Just when it comes to like clean living, prioritizing health and wellness, what has been a strategy, would you say, of yours raising your children to kind of have these similar values?
Yeah, I think kids really pick up on what we're doing. And so my kids have
Yeah.
seen me scrutinizing labels before we buy stuff. They know that we make all the food at home. We don't buy prepackaged food. So, when they started going to school, they have more questions because they see people with all of these other things that I'm not buying. And so I'm just very honest. And if I don't have the answer, we look it up together. Why are we not, Mom, why do you not buy Cokes? Well, here's why. So we go and it's like, it's exploration. We go and we look up the ingredients in Coke and we see what each one does and how it can affect us in the long term or what does it increase the risk for? And kids just soak that up. They're so curious. And when they understand why, it really sticks with them. And not to say that my kids never have a treat because they certainly do, especially when they're not at home, but they know we don't buy it and eat it on a regular basis and they can tell you why.
Wow, I think that's a great point because I think that is a big question is like, how do you find that balance
Yeah.
as a parent where you're not being too, I guess, maybe strict or putting in too many boundaries, but also you're using it as an educational opportunity to teach your kids, this is the reason why. And I love that you kind of walk them through the ingredients too as well. And, I'm an auntie to almost 4 coming up, and it's like I value these things a lot too. And so that's a great piece of advice, I think, through and through.
Yeah, I think the kids, we really just assume that they need different food and different products, but really they're just like us. I mean, I don't think that kids, I don't know, I really just think they're capable of so much more than we give them credit for. And my kids, it's just amazing now that they're 10, it's just amazing to see them. It's just
Yeah.
part of their life. It's not so difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Well, I love how you have just followed your passion and yet you've opened the door to help others through the app, through your Instagram, through your blogs, through all your different resources. I think that's such a calling, and I'm just so excited for you and so happy that you chose to pursue this because I think a lot of us are interested in health and wellness and just making better choices, but I think a lot of us don't really know where to start, especially in today's climate. And I think you provide an open door and kind of a gateway that's really approachable for the average person. And so I just want to kind of uplift you for that because I think that's just such a special calling.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And, where can people find you? Where can people get in touch with you and learn more about your app and all that you have going on?
Switchnatural.com is my website. It has a lot of blog posts if you want to deep dive. It has a link to my app. I am really active actually on Instagram. It's sort of where I first found my community, and we're pretty tight knit there, and I am very reachable there by direct message. And you can also email me, Andrea@switchnatural.com. Where else can you find me? I think those are the main places I would say.
Yeah. And we'll put that below in the show notes too, and we'll help promote you. But everybody, you'll get this app. I mean, you'll make your life a lot easier by using something like this and determining whether something is worth the purchase or not. Andrea, thank you so much for being on the Brand Bosses podcast, for using your voice for good above all else. I think that, like I said, it's such a special calling, and I'm just so happy that you're living that out for the betterment of society.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me, Jamie.
Yeah. All right, everybody, stay tuned for more episodes of the Brand Bosses podcast. And thank you for being here.